Hey soldiers, a Chicago suburb has gone ahead with a plan to institute reparations for some black people. Now we're going to get into this and we're going to talk about reparations and how you pretty much need to do that yourself. Reparations, I believe, is not something that's going to become widespread. And as we'll see when we go over this news about what the Chicago suburb is doing, people are thinking they're going to get millions of dollars for reparations. They are mistaken. You're not, right? California is already proving that. Gavin Newsom came out, we reported on this, and basically he brushed it off. He said, well, come on, this is going to cost a lot more than we anticipated, and they never intended to do it in the first place. Let me tell you something about reparations. For all of you out there who are advocates of this, let me tell you something. And I do have soldiers that are advocates for reparations. But the reality is, reparations is an issue that's used by the Democrat Party to keep you on the hook voting for them. Oh, one day, one great getting up morning, you're going to get reparations. Just keep believing. Keep voting for us. Now, if you put those evil white Republicans in office, there's no way you'll ever get reparations. I know the Republicans were the party of abolitionists, and they formed with the sole intent of ending slavery. Yeah, right. But we're talking about reparations. And even though the Democrat Party, yes, our history is that we separated from the country and went to war over not being able to keep our slaves, we're with you now. We're going to give you some money, okay? I've been talking about this for decades, and California and what they are doing, which again, I'll link to that, is as close as, that conversation has come to actual fruition. And now they're actually seeing, number one, hey, look, the black population of California is not even 10%, all right? The Asian population of California is larger than the black population, and you have the Hispanics and the whites. What legislator is going to go up to that state house, that capital, and going to vote on a measure to give around 7% of the population, and not even all blacks are going to qualify, but let's just say 7% of the population, that's roughly the black population of California. What legislator is going to vote to approve a reparations plan? They're talking about $1 million per person, per black person. Practically. Who's voting for that? All right. Is Gavin Newsom going to sign that? Well, he's trying to run for president, believe it or not. People are leaving his state in droves, but whatever. I mean, look what we got in there now, so anybody can run. Gavin Newsom is never going to sign that. In fact, he's not even going to have to, because he's going to send information to these legislators that, look, don't send this up here because I'm trying to run for president. And look, if on the off chance I get it, you want a friend in the White House, right? So don't embarrass me with this issue that can be used against me later to say I never signed. Either I never signed off on reparations or I did. Okay, either way, he can't win. Remember, only 43% of the population in California approve of reparations. Now, that's his home state. 60% prefer an apology. All right, so I'm just telling you the politics of this thing. If you're waiting around, if you're like writing down items you're going to buy with reparations, you're wasting your time. You are being hoodwinked, bamboozled, led astray, and run amok. Evanston, Illinois has committed to spending $10 million over 10 years for discrimination. Now, listen, if you're pro-reparation, understand all of the restrictions that are being put on here now. They got a limited amount of money, $10 million over 10 years. They don't say what happens after that. They don't say what happens when the 10 million runs out. Lewis Weathers, still remembers one of his first experiences with racial prejudice in this Chicago suburb along Lake Michigan, home of Northwestern University. At his integrated junior high school, a white teacher didn't want black students such as Weathers showing up their white classmates with the right answers to questions. He recalled, every time we raised our hands, she wouldn't call on us, but when we didn't raise our hands, she would, to make you look like a dummy, Weathers said. We got onto that, and when we did not know the answer, we started raising our hands. Now, 88 years old, the retired postal worker and Korean War veteran is among the initial beneficiaries of a city program, the first of its kind in the U.S., that pays black Evanston residents reparations for discrimination and a lack of access to housing. It is also working on programs to address gaps in education and economic development. Now, the account of his time in the school that he mentioned, if that indeed happened, that's unfortunate. Is it compensable? I don't think so. Okay. If it is, then, I think most people then would have some type of financial claim if they were mistreated by a teacher in a public school in some way, shape, or form. Now, they also talk about working on programs to address gaps in education and economic development. I'm so sick and tired of hearing the word economic development. Here in Baltimore, empowerment zones, economic development. Been hearing that for the last 50 years of my life, okay? And the city seems to decline economically year after year. Now, there is a 501c3 mafia out there. They seem to do better and better financially. Certain individuals have done very well preaching this message. But at the same time, areas like North Avenue and Dukeland Street in Baltimore City, do a Google search on it. Do the Google map thing. Look at it, okay? It literally looks like a war-torn area of, some Eastern European, conflict zone. And there's a lot of questions as to where's all the economic empowerment zone, where's all the money going? So when they talk about economic development, I'm always suspicious. Now, what we do need, and if you really want to talk about uplifting the black population and doing so economically, then the economic education piece is really where it's at. Black people and white people, Hispanics, and Asians as well. Asians are doing well, though, in the country. But most Americans are conspicuous consumers. We like the accoutrements of wealth. So what we do is we give away a lot of our hard-earned money to purchase liabilities, okay? We give it away to Nike. We give it away to Cadillac, to BMW, to all of these places. And then we talk about reparations and how we want the government to give us money. When we've got money, and we could, instead of looking at the shoes from Nike, or instead of looking at, the actual Tesla, maybe what we should start doing is looking at the stock of Nike, or the stock of Tesla, or the stock of Royal Caribbean. All right. Now, I am not suggesting that we abdicate having experiences and owning nice things, but there's a time and a place for everything. And I don't care if California does find a way to give black people $1 million. You ever see that Dave Chappelle skit on what would happen if black people got $1 million? Go watch it. It's got to be somewhere here on YouTube, maybe. They might have cut it off. But without a financial education, that's how anybody of any ethnicity is going to look in this country, okay? If they get found money. I don't care what the reason is. My wife and I, when we went on our honeymoon, we went to Bermuda, and we did take a cruise to Bermuda. And when we were on there was this lady. She was a Russian lady. And she had on a Fendi hat. She had on a Gucci shirt. She was like a walking billboard. And she was like the epitome of conspicuous consumerism. Now, coming out of, she looked old enough to have and spoke with an accent thick enough that the impression I got was this young lady actually lived in the Soviet Union. All right. So when they got out of that and were able to own nice things, some of them went wild with it. All right. But we cannot, and when I say we, I'm talking about all Americans. We cannot literally afford to do that anymore if we were ever able to in the first place. All right. I know people who are just enraptured with looking wealthy. They've got no plan whatsoever for the next 20 years. If, God forbid, they weren't able to work or participate in the trade that they're in right now and do business, I shudder to think what their circumstances would be like. So, yes, we need more economic education. That's why, if you are not a subscriber, you need to hit subscribe right now. Hit the bell icon to let you know when we drop a video. Also, share this with someone. Share this information. This is what we do here. We talk turkey about the economy, all right? I'm a realist. I'm not sitting up here waiting for some check from the government, all right, that is going to get taxed because the federal government has never said they're not taxing reparations. They want their cut as well. In 2019, the city of about 75,000, just north of Chicago, committed to spend $10 million over 10 years on local reparations. Now, mind you, where does the government get its money from? It gets its money from taxes. Just keep that in the back of your mind. Dozens of other municipalities across the U.S. have taken initial steps toward reparations since. So what they're going to do is give you some economic education. And they're going to build another empowerment zone. All right? And that's how your reparations are going to look. It's not going to look like a check to you. And it might equal maybe $25,000. It's a far cry from the million that some Californians are advocating for. Nearly 4 years later, Evanston is the only city that is delivering on its promise. By the end of this year, it expects to have distributed $25,000 each to 140 mostly elderly. So, Generation X, millennials, this doesn't include you. Mostly elderly residents like Weathers who were at least 18 and lived in the city between 1919 and 1969. Now, you could argue that, well, people on the front end of that are not even here anymore, okay? I don't think I think rather that's by design. All right, so you have to have lived in the city between 1919 and 1969 when the city passed a fair housing ordinance back in 69. The payments can come in either vouchers or cash and are funded by marijuana and real estate transfer tax. All right, so they're taxing marijuana, of course, and real estate transfer tax. So look for, governments always do this, when they find something that they can tax, taxes rarely go down, okay? That rarely happens, especially taxes like this. Because when you're transferring real estate, you just want to get it done, right? You don't want any hassle. You just want to get it done, so you pay the piper. And of course, if you're smoking marijuana, then whatever, you'll just pay, right? I see it as like a test run for the whole country, said Justin Hansford, a leading advocate for reparations at the federal and local level and head of the Thurgood Marshall Civil Rights Center at Howard University. Weathers remembers discrimination in many aspects of life in Evanston beyond the school, and including being excluded from the YMCA as a boy. Again, not right, okay? Totally wrong. Compensable? I don't think so. But Evanston, I guess they'll figure that out as they move further. So far, they're saying that's not compensable. They're saying that they're linking this to the housing law, not to the fact that your teacher called on you when she knew that you didn't know the answer, not due to the fact that the YMCA wouldn't let you in. They're linking it to real estate. All right, so this gentleman lived most of his life in the historically black Fifth Ward and was only able to move to a predominantly white neighborhood in 1969 when laws started to change. And look, I'm not disputing that things were bad back there for black people who wanted to live in good neighborhoods, wanted to take their money and do things with it, and they were boxed out of society. That happened, all right? And the reparations here are not for slavery, because there is no one alive today who was a slave under the American chattel slavery system. Now, there are people who are slaves today, a lot of whom are in Libya, in Africa. But in America, they're not billing this as reparations for slavery. They're billing it as reparations for systematized discrimination in the housing sector. Weathers said he gave his $25,000 check to his son, who put it toward debt reduction and upgrades on his condo. Now that was smart. Weathers used it as generational wealth, passed it on to his son, and his son reduced his debt. Excellent, because he took down the amount of interest he was paying, quite probably, and made upgrades to an asset, his condominium. Excellent, okay? How many people have the discipline to do that in America? I don't know, but if you look at retail sales, I don't know. Evanston's modest program to compensate for decades of discrimination faced plenty of internal challenges and comes as grander efforts at reparation could be years off, if they come at all. Never forget, this is a program that's time will never come. Because you're going to be moving further and further away from not linking it to slavery, okay, because all those people are deceased. But if you're going to link it to discriminatory practices pre-civil rights legislation, then those people are leaving the planet also, okay, due to the natural course of things. All right, this comes at the same time that a federal bill introduced, which has been introduced every year since 1989, that would establish a similar task force, or a task force to look at this issue at the national level. It's never been voted on in the U.S. House of Representatives, okay, since 1989. How many times have the Democrats had control of the House? All right, Nancy Pelosi was in there for a long time, yet this never came up for a vote in the House of Representatives. This is what I'm talking about, right? You're never going to get it. The people that are the loudest advocates for it won't do what's necessary to make it happen. It isn't likely to come up for a vote under a Republican-controlled Congress, advocates said. Did it come up for a vote under a Democrat Congress? All right? Look, tell the whole truth, people. Rue Simmons is a former city council member up in Evanston. She says, we've done all forms of affirmative action and equity work that has been really good, but we have not repaired the past harm by the municipal government. And until you create a time machine, you won't be able to do that because that occurred in the past. What you have to do if you want to see blacks in a better economic position, then these legislators who know very little about how the economy works have to start talking about education. They have to start talking about generational wealth, asset acquisition, the things we talk about on this channel, all right? Unfortunately, there's no easy way to get this done. Because again, even if you hand someone a check for $25,000, the likelihood of them doing what the gentleman did and then what his son did with the money, in America, we know that the likelihood of that happening is slim. The likelihood of them putting that money out into the economy, making a purchase, maybe even going into debt. Okay, so getting $25,000 and then putting themselves in a situation where they owe on a liability like a car, that's $40,000. All right, so now they're worse off than before they got the money. Initially, the city planned to fund the program through marijuana tax revenue, but those revenues were coming in too slowly. Not enough people smoking weed. Ain't that a shame? So the city council voted to use funds from the real estate transfer tax on higher value properties. Now, what they'll say is, oh, well, this is a way to make it come from the white people, where, I guess everybody, all demographics are smoking weed up there, but again, not enough. So look for that if they want to expand this program. They're going to move that high value property definition down. And black people buy high value properties too. All right. So In some ways, you could be seeing money put in your right pocket that just came out of, the government just took out of your left pocket. All right, Kenneth Wideman, who's a Vietnam veteran. He's 77 years old. They were going to receive a voucher to buy a property. They're renters now and have been for a long, long time. They said that they're too old to purchase. They feel they're too old to purchase a home right now. So there is that. So again, this is coming late for a lot of people. This gentleman, Wideman, says, we have not received real reparations, the 40 acres and a mule that were promised after the Civil War, he said. I wish people behind me would get that and more than what I got. Listen, William Tecumseh Sherman, General Sherman, had gone out and issued a field order that blacks should receive 40 acres and a mule to help them get started economically in the country. Because the reality is, when you have a system where people are held in bondage, the fruits of their labor are not actually going to them. All right. And then you just one day they wake up and, oh, you're free. You can leave now. OK, that situation is definitely going to have a deleterious effect on the economic viability of that group. I don't think any reasonable person could argue that. All right. You've never taught these people how to acquire assets or anything like that, although there were blacks who did quickly start to understand economics and build communities like Rosewood in Florida, like Black Wall Street. Okay, you did have that, and I would encourage you to look into what happened with those communities. Look into the fullness of what happened, not the hype, not the propaganda, but the complete story. There are several books out there that can help you do that. I don't have my books all over the place. I don't have it with me right now, and I can't remember the title of one of them. I'll research and put it in the comments. Listen, that's true. Okay, so from that standpoint, just freeing slaves, okay, you can go now. This is why some slaves actually were like disappointed to hear that this thing was over, because they were questioning, okay, where am I going to live? Where am I going to get the money to eat? What am I going to do? Because yes, slavery's over, but we still have a system here that views blacks as incapable. And even if you encountered whites who were ubiquitous in terms of the power structure at that time, even if you met up with whites who were egalitarian and said, okay, look, I know you're black, but I don't care. I'm going to put you to work. Were the skill sets such that you could move out of the agrarian South up into the industrialized North and still have people, black people, able to realize some skill transferability to make money? All right. So a complex and complicated situation. And yes, because of that detriment and handicap, that initial handicap from the original sin, just letting blacks go without any training on how to survive in that economy, there has been a legacy that has persisted. Now, in 2023, I don't think there's any excuse for anyone with an internet connection. Okay, so even people with an Obama phone have the means to figure out how to acquire assets. You don't even need to purchase a whole share of stock right now. You can purchase fractional shares. So if you got $5, you can get in on the game. All right. You can access platforms like YouTube to get the knowledge you need to start investing and acquiring. You can pull your family together. All right. And start to accelerate things. In the video, we talked about multi-generational families. Take a look at this video, guys. I can go on forever on this. People, look, do not sit around and wait for these reparations. I don't care how you feel about it or how deserving you think you are. It's just practically never going to happen. You are being used. They're keeping you on a hook in order to keep you voting. And think about how many people have come and gone voting based on this issue, thinking these politicians are going to do something. And we just showed you how the Congress has had this and the ability to bring it up in multiple Democrat-controlled sessions of Congress, and they've never done it. That ought to tell you all you need to know. So, continue to watch the channel. Watch this video right here. If you want to say, look, if they give me a check, they give me a check. If they don't, I don't really care because I am set. I'm on the road to financial independence. Look at the lesson that we can learn from this video right here on generational wealth. We can do it ourselves. White, black, Asian, Hispanic, who cares? We can do it ourselves. Let's not wait around for the government. Watch video, guys. I'll talk to you soon.